The wrench slipped from Riley's grease-stained fingers and clattered against the metal deck. She cursed under her breath and reached for it again, her back aching from hours spent wedged beneath a broken atmospheric processor. Frontier's Edge had seen better days, and so had its equipment. Everything on this trading outpost seemed held together by prayers and improvisation. She finally freed the stuck coupling and dragged herself out from under the machinery. Her coveralls were filthy, her arms covered in bruises, and her stomach growled with hunger. But at least the processor would run for another week before it needed attention again. That was life on the edge of civilized space. Nothing ever worked quite right, and nobody had enough money to fix things properly. Riley cleaned her tools and stored them in her battered toolkit. The station's artificial lighting had dimmed to simulate evening, though time meant little in the void of space. Most of the merchants and travelers had retreated to the entertainment sectors or their quarters. The docking area where Riley worked fell quiet except for the hum of idle ships and the occasional hiss of pressure equalization. She took the long way back to her workshop, too tired to care about taking shortcuts through the maintenance tunnels. The main corridors of Frontier's Edge were wide enough for cargo haulers and lined with shops that catered to every species imaginable. Some sold food that humans could eat. Others offered items that would kill a human just by touching them. Riley had learned long ago to keep her hands in her pockets and her eyes on the path ahead. That was why she almost missed him. The alley between two storage facilities was dark, lit only by a failing emergency light that flickered with each cycle. Most people walked past without a second glance. This was neutral territory, a place where the law meant little and everyone minded their own business. But something made Riley stop and look closer. An alien lay crumpled against the wall, his body twisted at an angle that suggested he had fallen and lacked the strength to rise. His skin was a deep purple that faded to gray at the edges, marked with patterns that seemed to shift in the dim light. He wore robes that had once been fine but were now torn and stained with something dark. His breathing came in shallow gasps. Riley recognized the species. Vothran. She had seen a few during her years on the station, though they rarely stayed long. They were an old race, known for their wisdom and their neutrality in galactic politics. This one looked ancient even by their standards, his skin loose and his limbs trembling with each breath. She glanced around. Several other beings moved through the corridor, but none of them stopped. A merchant pushing a cargo sled actively steered around the alley entrance. Two insectoid traders chittered to each other as they passed, their multifaceted eyes glancing at the dying Vothran before looking away. Riley knew she should keep walking. The station had rules, unwritten but absolute. Don't get involved. Don't ask questions. Don't help anyone unless you expect payment. She had her own problems to worry about. Her workshop lease was due in 2 weeks, and she was short on credits. She could not afford to take on someone else's trouble, but she could not walk away from someone dying in an alley. Riley approached the Vothran slowly, not wanting to startle him. His eyes opened as she knelt beside him, revealing pupils that were vertical slits surrounded by gold. Those eyes held pain and something else. Resignation, perhaps, or acceptance of death. "Can you understand me?" Riley asked. The Vothran's mouth moved, and after a moment, sounds emerged that Riley's translator earpiece converted to words. "Yes, I understand." His voice was weak but clear. "You should go. Helping me will bring danger." "You're hurt," Riley said, ignoring the warning. She could see wounds on his torso now, burns that looked like they came from energy weapons. "What happened?" "Cashin," the Vothran whispered. "They hunt my people. I escaped, but not far enough." He coughed, and dark fluid leaked from the corner of his mouth. "Please leave me. Save yourself." Riley had heard of the Cashin Empire. Everyone had. They were expanding their territory aggressively, crushing anyone who stood in their way. But she had never heard of them targeting the Vothran specifically. The old ones kept to themselves and avoided galactic conflicts. "I'm not leaving you here," Riley said firmly. She slipped her arms under the Vothran's shoulders and tried to lift him. He was lighter than she expected, his body frail beneath the robes. "My workshop isn't far. I have medical supplies." "Foolish human," the Vothran said, but he did not resist as Riley helped him to his feet. He leaned heavily on her, barely able to walk. "You do not know what you risk." "Probably not," Riley admitted. "But I know I can't watch someone die when I can help." They moved slowly through the corridors, Riley supporting most of the Vothran's weight. A few beings watched them pass, but no one interfered. On Frontier's edge, you could get away with almost anything, as long as you didn't disrupt trade or damage station property. Helping a dying alien barely registered as noteworthy. Riley's workshop was small, crammed with spare parts and half-finished repair jobs. She cleared a space on her workbench and helped the Vothran lie down. He groaned as she examined his wounds. The burns were severe, cutting deep into his flesh. She had treated injuries before, but nothing like this. She broke open her emergency medical kit, the one she kept for herself in case of accidents. The supplies were basic, meant for humans, but she hoped they would help. She cleaned the wounds as gently as she could and applied synthetic skin patches. The Vothran bore the pain in silence, his golden eyes watching her face. "Why?" he finally asked. "You do not know me. My people have no alliance with yours. Why risk yourself?" Riley did not have a good answer. She just knew it felt wrong to leave him there. "Someone needed help," she said simply. "That's reason enough." The Vothran's expression shifted, something that might have been surprise or confusion. "What is your name, human?" "Riley. I am called Orim." He closed his eyes, exhausted. "You have shown me great kindness, Riley. I only hope it does not cost you your life." 3 days passed before Orim could sit up without pain lancing through his body. Riley split her time between repair jobs that earned her credits and caring for the injured Vothran. She brought him water that she purified through her workshop's filtration system and food that she could barely afford. Her own meals became smaller and less frequent, but she did not complain. Orim watched her with those strange golden eyes, studying her movements and expressions. He seemed surprised each time she returned to check on him, as if he expected her to abandon him once the initial burst of compassion faded. But Riley kept coming back, kept bringing supplies, kept asking if he needed anything. On the 4th day, Orim finally felt strong enough to talk properly. Riley sat on a stool beside the workbench, eating a protein bar that tasted like cardboard mixed with synthetic flavoring. Orim refused the food she offered him, explaining that Vothran could only digest specific nutrients that were not available on the station. "You will starve if you keep feeding me," Orim said. His voice had grown stronger, though he still moved carefully to avoid reopening his wounds. "I'll manage," Riley said around a mouthful of protein bar. "I've been hungry before." "That is not an answer. That is deflection." Orim shifted position, his robes rustling. "Why do you sacrifice for a stranger?" Riley shrugged. "My grandfather used to say that we're defined by what we do when nobody's watching and there's no reward. You needed help. I could give it. Simple as that." Nothing is simple where humans are concerned, I am learning. Orim reached up with one thin hand and touched a pendant that hung around his neck. Riley had noticed it before. A small crystal that seemed to glow with internal light. "You deserve to know the truth of what you have involved yourself in," he explained slowly, choosing his words with care. The Vothran were an ancient species, one of the first to achieve space travel. They had explored the galaxy for thousands of years, accumulating knowledge and wisdom. But they were not warriors or conquerors. They were scholars and historians, keepers of secrets and guardians of memory. The Kashan Empire had risen to power over the past century, expanding through military might and ruthless efficiency. They viewed the Vothran's knowledge as a threat and a resource to be exploited. For years, they had been hunting down Vothran elders, capturing them and extracting their memories through machines that tore information from their minds. The process was agonizing and always fatal. "I was held in one of their research facilities for 3 months, Orim said quietly. "They took much from me. Names of my family, locations of our sanctuaries, details of our history. But I managed to escape before they could take everything." Riley felt sick. "That's torture." "Yes. The Empire does not concern itself with such moral distinctions." Orim's hand closed around the crystal pendant. "I carry something they want desperately. This crystal contains the complete memory archive of my clan, 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge including locations of ancient weapons and technologies that predate most modern civilizations. Can't you hide it somewhere? Or destroy it? The crystal is bonded to me biologically. Only I can access its contents and only my death can destroy it." Orim's expression grew sad. "I have been running for months, knowing that eventually they will find me. I thought to die here alone and unremarkable. Then you found me instead." Riley set down her protein bar, her appetite gone. They're still looking for you. They will never stop looking. The Empire has infinite patience and resources. Orym met her eyes. You must leave this station, Riley. Go far from here before they arrive. I am grateful for your kindness, but I will not let you die for it. Where would I go? The station is my home. I've got my workshop, my tools, my life here. Riley stood and paced across the small space. Besides, running away doesn't solve anything. They'll still find you. Better one death than two. Better no deaths at all. Riley turned to face him. There has to be a way to protect that information without you dying. There is not. I have searched for alternatives for months. Orym sighed, a sound like wind through hollow reeds. The Vothran built safeguards into our memory crystals long ago. We feared that our knowledge might be stolen or misused. The only security we could guarantee was to make it impossible to transfer. Riley's mind raced through possibilities. She was good with machines and systems, but this was beyond her expertise. Still, she refused to accept that there was no solution. Humans had built a reputation throughout the galaxy for finding answers to impossible problems, usually through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. How long before they track you here? She asked. Days, perhaps. A week, if we are fortunate. Orym struggled to his feet, moving slowly. I should leave now, draw them away from you. You can barely walk. You wouldn't make it to the next sector. Riley grabbed her toolkit. We need to buy time. If they're tracking you somehow, maybe I can disrupt the signal or mask it. They track me through the crystal itself. It emits a unique signature that their sensors can detect across vast distances. Everything emits some kind of signal, and anything that emits a signal can be blocked or hidden. Riley opened her toolkit and pulled out a portable scanner. Let me look at it. Orym hesitated, then removed the crystal from around his neck and handed it to her. The moment it left contact with his skin, the glow faded slightly. Riley held it up to her scanner and watched the readings scroll across the small screen. There, she said, pointing to a pattern in the energy output. That's your tracking signature. It's in a frequency range that most species don't use for communications, which makes it stand out like a beacon. Can you stop it? Maybe. If I can build a field generator that floods this area with noise in the same frequency range, it might mask the signal. Won't stop them forever, but it could buy us time. Riley was already pulling parts from her storage bins, her mind working through the design. I'll need a few hours. Orym watched as Riley began assembling components with practiced efficiency. Her hands moved with confidence, connecting wires and calibrating circuits. She muttered to herself as she worked, occasionally cursing when a part did not fit quite right. You truly believe you can save me? Orym said softly. I don't know if I can, Riley admitted without looking up from her work. But I'm sure as hell going to try. Riley's improvised signal jammer worked for exactly 4 days. She knew it was failing when her security sensors started picking up unusual scanning patterns sweeping through the station. The scans were methodical and thorough, moving section by section through Frontier's edge like a net tightening around prey. She had hoped for more time. The jammer had been a desperate solution, built from spare parts and held together by determination. Against the sophisticated tracking technology of the Kashan Empire, it was like trying to stop a flood with a paper dam. They're here, Riley said, watching her monitor display the scan patterns. Multiple ships in docking orbits. They're conducting a systematic search. Orym rose from where he had been resting. His wounds had healed enough for him to move without pain, though he remained weak. You must go now, Riley. Take your most valuable possessions and leave the station. I will wait here for them. And let them torture you to death? Not happening. Riley was already pulling supplies from her shelves. She grabbed her toolkit, her emergency credits chip, and a plasma cutter that could serve as a weapon if necessary. There's a network of maintenance tunnels that runs through the whole station. Most people don't know about them because they're not on the official maps. We cannot hide forever. We don't need forever. We just need long enough for help to arrive. Riley had activated an old distress beacon 2 days ago, sending out a signal on frequencies used by independent traders and free ships. It was a desperate gamble. Most captains avoided getting involved in imperial business. But humans had a reputation for helping other humans, even when it was dangerous. The problem was that Riley had no idea if any human ships were in range, or if they would respond in time. Her workshop door shuddered as something heavy impacted against it from outside. Riley grabbed Orem's arm and pulled him toward the back wall, where a maintenance access panel was hidden behind a stack of storage containers. She yanked the containers aside and pried open the panel. Through here, quickly. The maintenance tunnel beyond was narrow and dark, lit only by occasional emergency strips that glowed a dull red. Riley and Orem squeezed through the opening, just as her workshop door exploded inward. She caught a glimpse of armored figures moving through the smoke before she sealed the access panel behind them. "This way," Riley whispered, leading Orem deeper into the tunnel system. She knew these passages better than most station residents. She had spent years exploring them, mapping out shortcuts and hiding spots. That knowledge was their only advantage now. Behind them, she heard the screech of metal as the soldiers tore open the access panel. Footsteps echoed through the tunnels, moving with the precision of trained hunters. Riley and Arim moved as quickly as they could, but Arim's weakness slowed them down. Every few minutes they had to stop so he could catch his breath. They emerged from the tunnels into one of the station's main thoroughfares. The corridor was crowded with civilians, all of them looking frightened and confused. Kashan soldiers moved through the crowd, stopping random beings and scanning them with handheld devices. Riley watched as they pressed the scanner against a merchant's forehead. The merchant collapsed, trembling and drooling, his mind temporarily scrambled by the neural probe. "They're scanning everyone," Riley muttered, "looking for Vothran brain patterns or anyone who's been in recent contact with Vothran. Then they will find us soon." Orem's golden eyes surveyed the scene. "We are trapped." Riley refused to accept that. She pulled Orem into a side corridor that led toward the station's central hub. It was a risk. The hub was the most public area on Frontier's edge, a massive open space where merchants set up temporary stalls and travelers gathered to exchange news. But it was also the one place where the soldiers might hesitate to cause a scene. They reached the hub just as a group of soldiers entered from the opposite side. Riley froze, her hand tight on Orem's arm. There was nowhere to run. Civilians filled the space around them, but no one met Riley's eyes. Everyone had learned the same lesson. Don't get involved. Don't be noticed. A Kashan officer stepped forward from the group of soldiers. His armor was more ornate than the others, marked with symbols that indicated rank. His face was humanoid but wrong somehow, with skin that looked like polished stone and eyes that reflected no light. "Human female," the officer said, his voice amplified by his armor's speakers. "You are harboring a fugitive of the Kashan Empire. Surrender the Vothran Elder immediately, and you will be compensated for your cooperation." Riley's heart hammered in her chest. She wanted to run, to fight, to do anything other than stand there exposed and helpless. But she forced herself to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about. We tracked the Vothran's signal to your workshop. Our sensors show you have been in prolonged contact with him. There is no point in denying what we already know." The officer gestured, and soldiers moved to surround Riley and Orem. "You have one opportunity to avoid severe consequences. Give us the Elder." Riley stepped in front of Orem, placing herself between him and the soldiers. It was a futile gesture. She was unarmed except for the plasma cutter in her toolkit, and she was facing trained warriors in advanced combat armor, but she could not bring herself to step aside. "No," she said simply. The officer tilted his head, studying her. "You would die for a creature you barely know? A being of a different species with whom your people have no alliance?" "I would die before I hand someone over to be tortured," Riley said. Her voice shook but remained steady. "That's what makes us different from you. Sentiment is not strength. Compassion is not power." The officer raised one hand and the soldiers leveled their weapons at Riley. "You will surrender the Vothran, or you will die with him. Choose now." Riley opened her mouth to answer, but Orem spoke first. "I will surrender," the elder said, his voice carrying across the silent hub. "The human has shown me kindness I did not expect to find in this galaxy. I will not allow her to die for it." He stepped forward, moving past Riley despite her attempt to hold him back. "Take me, do what you will. Only promise that she will be unharmed." The officer smiled, an expression that held no warmth. "The Empire keeps its promises. The human will be released once we have what we came for." Riley grabbed Orem's arm. "No, don't do this." "I am old, Riley. I have lived far longer than most of my kind. But you are young, with a full life ahead of you." Orem's golden eyes met hers. "Thank you for reminding me that goodness still exists." The soldiers moved forward to take Orem into custody. Riley tried to stop them, but armored hands pulled her back. She struggled, shouting protests that no one would answer. The crowd of civilians watched in silence, afraid to intervene. Then the station's alert system blared to life, red lights flashing throughout the hub. A voice echoed through the speakers, speaking in standard galactic common. "Attention, Kashan vessels. This is the Earth Expeditionary Ship Defiant. You are ordered to cease hostile operations immediately and withdraw from Frontier's edge. Failure to comply will result in immediate military action." The officer froze, his hand still reaching for Orem. Everyone in the hub looked up at the speakers. Confusion and shock spreading through the crowd. Riley felt hope surge through her chest. The distress signal had reached someone after all. Help had come, and it wore the flag of Earth. The Kashan officer, whose name was Dravik, accessed his communication systems with a thought. Status reports flooded his neural interface from the fleet surrounding Frontier's edge. 20 Kashan warships held position around the station, their weapon systems active and targeting solutions prepared. Against them, 6 human vessels had dropped out of faster-than-light travel and were taking up aggressive positions. The numbers should have made Dravik confident. The Kashan Empire had built its fleet over centuries, each ship a masterwork of military engineering. The human vessels were crude by comparison, their hulls thick and inelegant, their weapons visible on external mounts rather than hidden behind proper armor plating. Intelligence reports classified human military technology as primitive, barely worthy of attention. But something in the human commander's voice made Dravik hesitate. There was no fear in it, no uncertainty, just a flat statement of intent that promised violence. "Human vessel defiant," Dravik responded through his armor's communication system. "You are interfering in Imperial business. The Empire is operating within its legal rights to recover stolen property. Withdraw now or face consequences." The response came within seconds. "Dravik, we've reviewed the station's security footage. You're not recovering property. You're hunting refugees and threatening civilians. That ends now." Dravik's fingers twitched with irritation. How did the humans know his name? How had they accessed station security systems so quickly? He pushed the questions aside and focused on the tactical situation. "You are outnumbered and outgunned. Your vessels cannot hope to match Imperial warships. I will give you one opportunity to retreat before we destroy you." Acknowledged. "Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Captain Holt, and I command a strike group that's been tracking your fleet's movements for the past month. We know about the Vothran you've been hunting. We know about the research facilities where you torture them for information, and we know about the massacre on Vela Station 3 weeks ago." Dravik felt a flicker of concern. The incident on Vela Station was classified. How had humans obtained that information? "We've been waiting for you to make a mistake," Holt continued. "Today you threatened one of our people. That's the mistake we needed. So here's what's going to happen, Dravik. You're going to release the human woman and the Vothran elder. You're going to withdraw your forces from this station, and then you're going to answer for your crimes." Dravik laughed, the sound harsh and metallic through his armor's speakers. "You dare to threaten the Empire with 6 ships? You are either insane or suicidal." "Maybe both," Holt admitted. "But mostly we're just really angry. Nobody hurts our people." The human ships accelerated, not in the careful, measured way that military vessels typically maneuvered. They simply pointed at the Kashan fleet and burned their engines at maximum thrust, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Dravik's tactical officer sent an urgent alert. The human ships were moving faster than safety protocols allowed, their acceleration pushing them to structural limits. It was reckless and dangerous and completely unexpected. "All ships, open fire," Dravik ordered. The Kashan fleet launched a coordinated barrage, energy weapons and missiles converging on the human vessels. It should have been a massacre. But the humans did not try to dodge or deploy countermeasures like civilized military forces. Instead, they angled their thick hulls to absorb hits on their strongest armor points and kept coming. One human destroyer took a direct hit from a plasma cannon that should have vaporized it. The ship's outer hull melted and peeled away, but the vessel kept firing, its weapons raking across a Kashan cruiser's shields. When the destroyer's weapons failed, its captain did the unthinkable. He rammed his crippled ship directly into the cruiser, the impact destroying both vessels in a bloom of flame and debris. 4. Riley was the last transmission from the destroyer's captain. Dravik watched in shock. As the human fleet tore into his formation like predators attacking prey, they fought without regard for their own safety, exploiting every weakness in the caution positions. A human frigate, smaller and less armed than its opponents, positioned itself deliberately in the blind spot of a Kashan battleship and fired point-blank into the larger vessel's engine assemblies. This was not how space combat worked. Ships were expensive and took years to build. Crews required extensive training. No rational commander sacrificed vessels unnecessarily, but the humans fought as if their ships were disposable, as if the only thing that mattered was destroying the enemy. On the station, Dravik's soldiers received frantic updates from the fleet. The Kashan were losing. It should have been impossible, but the numbers did not lie. 3 Kashan warships were destroyed, 5 more damaged. The human fleet was reduced to 4 vessels, all badly damaged, but they showed no signs of retreating. "Sir," one of Dravik's subordinates said urgently, "human boarding craft are approaching the station. They're cutting through our perimeter." Dravik forced himself to focus on the immediate situation. He still held Riley and Orem, which gave him leverage. "Prepare defensive positions. We'll use the civilians as shields if necessary." But before his soldiers could move, an explosion tore through one of the hub's entrances. Smoke billowed into the space, and through it came figures in combat armor marked with Earth's insignia. The human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their weapons up and their movements coordinated. Leading them was a man whose armor showed more wear than the others, scarred by battles and patched with field repairs. His helmet was retracted, showing a face that was weathered and hard. This was Captain Holt, and he looked at Dravik with eyes that held no mercy. "You have 10 seconds to release them and surrender," Holt said. His voice was level and calm, more terrifying than any shout. "After that, we stop being polite." Dravik drew himself up, relying on his authority and the power of the Empire behind him. "You cannot threaten me. I act with imperial authority. Any action you take against me will be considered an act of war against the entire Kashan Empire." Holt's response was to shoot the soldier standing next to Dravik. Not a fatal shot, but the energy bolt burned through the soldier's leg armor and sent him crashing to the ground, screaming. 9 seconds. The other Kashan soldiers shifted nervously. They could see what Dravik refused to acknowledge. The humans were not bluffing. They had already destroyed half a fleet. They had boarded a station held by Imperial forces. They were not going to stop now. 8 seconds, Holt said, his weapon now pointed at Dravik's head. One of Dravik's subordinates made the decision for him. The soldier dropped his weapon and raised his hands in surrender. Others followed suit, practical survival instinct overriding loyalty to their commander. Dravik stood alone, his authority crumbling around him. Above the station, the Kashan fleet was in full retreat, jumping to faster-than-light speeds to escape the human vessels that pursued them like hunting dogs chasing wounded prey. 7 seconds, Holt said. Dravik's hand moved toward his weapon. He was an officer of the Kashan Empire. He would not surrender to primitive humans who did not understand their place in the Galactic Order. Holt shot him. Not fatally, but the energy bolt struck Dravik's weapon hand and sent his sidearm skittering across the floor. The captain stepped forward and pressed his weapon against Dravik's helmet. "On your knees now." Dravik knelt, his mind struggling to process what had happened. The Empire did not lose to inferior forces. The Empire did not surrender to upstart species who had barely left their home system. But the Empire was not here now, and the humans were. Holt gestured to his medics, who rushed forward to tend to Riley and Orem. Riley was shaking but unharmed. Orem looked at the human soldiers with something like wonder in his golden eyes. "You came," Riley said, her voice breaking. "You actually came." Holt's expression softened slightly as he looked at her. "Of course we came. You're one of ours. Nobody threatens our people without answering for it." He turned to his soldiers. "Secure the prisoners. Get our people to safety. And someone find me a communication line to Earth Command. We need to report that humanity just went to war with the Kashan Empire." The medical bay aboard the human vessel Defiant was smaller than Riley expected, packed with equipment that looked functional rather than elegant. A medic had checked her over, treating minor bruises and giving her something for the shock. She sat on an examination table now, wrapped in a thermal blanket and holding a cup of something hot that tasted like synthetic tea. Orem rested on a bed across from her, connected to monitors that translated Vothran biological readings into formats the human medics could understand. His wounds had been properly treated, and color had returned to his purple skin. but his golden eyes held a distant look, as if he was still processing everything that had happened. Captain Holt entered the medical bay, his armor removed and replaced with a simple uniform. Without the combat gear, he looked older than Riley had initially thought. Lines creased his face and gray streaked through his dark hair. He nodded to the medic, who quietly left to give them privacy. "How are you feeling?" Holt asked Riley. "Confused mostly," Riley admitted. "I sent out a distress signal, but I never expected anyone to actually respond. Especially not like this." Holt pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. "Your signal reached our patrol group about 6 hours ago. We'd been tracking the Kashan fleet that was hunting Vothran refugees. When we received a distress call from a human civilian in the middle of their operation, the decision to intervene became simple." "You started a war to save 2 people?" "We started a war because the Kashan Empire needed to learn that some lines cannot be crossed." Holt's expression hardened. "They've been operating with impunity for too long, assuming that newer species like humanity would stay quiet and avoid trouble. They were wrong." Orim spoke up from his bed, his voice stronger than before. "Captain Holt, I am grateful for your intervention. But you must understand the consequences. The Kashan Empire will not forgive this insult. They will retaliate against Earth." "Let them try," Holt said flatly. "We've been preparing for this fight since we first learned what they were doing to the Vothran and other peaceful species. The massacre on Velas Station was the final proof we needed. The Empire isn't expanding through diplomacy and cooperation. They're doing it through terror and genocide." Riley leaned forward. "What happened on Velas Station?" Holt's jaw tightened. 3 weeks ago, a Kashan battle group attacked a civilian station where several Vothran elders were living in sanctuary. They killed everyone, 2,000 beings, most of them non-combatants. Then they claimed it was a tragic accident, that their weapons malfunctioned during a routine inspection. "That's a lie," Orim said quietly. "I heard reports from survivors before the Empire silenced them. The attack was deliberate and methodical. They wanted to make an example, to show what happens to those who shelter my people, which is why Earth Command authorized our strike group to intervene if we found proof of Imperial crimes," Holt explained. "When your distress signal came through, Riley, and we saw the Kashan threatening you and Orim, we had our justification." Riley tried to wrap her mind around it. She had just been trying to help someone who was dying. She had not intended to start an interstellar conflict. What happens now? "Now we take you somewhere safe while the diplomats and politicians figure out what comes next." Holt stood and walked to a view screen on the wall, activating it to show the space around Frontier's edge. The Kashan fleet had fled, leaving only debris and a handful of damaged ships that had been captured. "The Empire will protest loudly about our actions. They'll demand reparations and threaten retaliation, but they won't attack Earth directly, not yet." "Why not?" Riley asked. "Because they just learned something important about humanity. We don't fight by their rules. We don't calculate acceptable losses and strategic advantages. When you threaten our people, we come for you with everything we have, and we don't stop until the threat is eliminated." Holt turned back to face them. The Empire built its power on intimidation. They're not prepared to fight an enemy that refuses to be intimidated. Orim shifted on his bed, drawing their attention. "There is another factor you may not have considered, Captain. The crystal I carry contains information that could help Earth significantly. Locations of ancient technologies, weapon designs, strategic resources. I intended to die with this knowledge to keep it from the Empire. But perhaps there is a better solution. You want to share it with us?" Holt asked carefully. "I want to share it with beings who would use it wisely, who would protect the weak rather than exploit them." Orim's golden eyes moved between Holt and Riley. "Your people came to save one human and one old Vothran. You risked your lives and your ships for beings you did not know. That is the mark of a species worth trusting." Riley felt tears threatening. She had not expected any of this. She had just wanted to help someone, and now she was sitting in the middle of an interstellar incident with an alien elder, offering humanity secrets worth more than she could imagine. "The decision isn't mine to make," Holt said, "but I know Earth Command will want to speak with you directly, Orim. If you're willing to share your knowledge, it could change the balance of power in this sector." "I am willing," Orim confirmed. "But I have conditions. The information must be used to protect, not to conquer. Earth must promise to shelter other Vothran refugees who seek sanctuary. And Riley must be honored for her courage and compassion." "I don't need honor. Riley protested. I just did what anyone should do. That is precisely why you deserve it, Orym said gently. In a galaxy where most beings have learned to look away from suffering, you chose to help. That choice changed everything. The medical bay's door opened and a young officer entered with a data pad. Captain, we're receiving multiple communication requests from stations and ships throughout the sector. News about what happened here is spreading fast. Holt took the data pad and scanned its contents. His eyebrows rose. Interesting. We're getting messages from civilian groups thanking us for standing up to the Empire, and several other governments are requesting information about our actions. The galaxy is watching, Orym said. What happened here will ripple outward. The Kashan Empire maintained power partly through the perception that resistance was futile. You have shattered that perception. Riley looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly from adrenaline and shock. She had woken up this morning as a salvage technician worried about paying her lease. How she was part of something much larger, something that might reshape galactic politics. What about the people on Frontier's Edge? She asked. The station took damage during the fighting. Earth relief ships are already on their way, Holt assured her. We'll help repair the damage and provide medical care to anyone who was injured, and we'll make sure the Kashan know that this station is under our protection now. Riley nodded slowly, trying to process it all. She looked at Orym, who watched her with an expression that might have been pride or affection. Thank you, the elder said simply. For everything. You're welcome, Riley replied. That's what humans do. We help. 6 months after the incident at Frontier's Edge, Riley stood on the observation deck of a Vothran sanctuary station called Haven's Rest. Through the transparent panels, she could see ships coming and going in a steady stream. Some were human vessels, their blocky hulls distinctive among the more elegant designs of other species. Others belonged to the dozens of alien races that had sought refuge here since Earth had declared the station under its protection. The view still amazed her. She had gone from a struggling salvage technician to someone with a role in shaping galactic politics. It was not a role she had wanted, but life rarely cared about what people wanted. You seem troubled, Orym said, approaching from behind. The elder moved with ease now, fully recovered from his injuries. He wore new robes, deep purple trimmed with gold, and the memory crystal hung around his neck as always. Just thinking about how much has changed, Riley admitted. Half a year ago I was worried about making rent. Now I'm standing on a station that holds 10,000 refugees, and Earth is negotiating treaties with species I'd never even heard of. Change is often sudden and unexpected, but not always unwelcome. Orym joined her at the viewport, his golden eyes reflecting the starlight. You changed my fate, Riley, and in doing so, you changed the fate of many others. The Kashan Empire had protested loudly about Earth's interference, as Holt predicted. They had demanded that humanity turn over Orym and pay reparations for the destroyed Kashan vessels. Earth's response had been simple and direct, no. Instead, Earth had released evidence of the Empire's crimes to the galactic community, including footage from Velis Station and testimony from survivors. The reaction had been mixed. Some governments condemned the Empire's actions but stopped short of taking any real measures against them. Others, emboldened by humanity's example, began offering sanctuary to Vothran refugees and other species fleeing imperial persecution. A few even formed a loose coalition with Earth, calling themselves the Free Worlds Alliance. The Kashan Empire had retreated, consolidating their territory and avoiding direct confrontation with human forces, but tensions remained high and everyone knew the peace was temporary. Eventually, there would be another confrontation. The question was when and where. The Vothran Council wants to meet with you tomorrow, Orym said, changing the subject. They wish to formally thank you for saving my life and protecting our people. Riley made a face. I really don't need another ceremony. The last one was uncomfortable enough. You are a symbol now, whether you wish it or not. The human who chose compassion over safety. The woman who started a war to save a stranger. Orym's tone was gentle but firm. Your story matters to beings across the galaxy. My story is just that I couldn't leave someone to die in an alley, Riley protested. Anyone would have done the same, but they did not. You did. Orym touched her shoulder lightly. That is the point. In a galaxy that has grown cynical and afraid, you reminded everyone that individual choices matter, that one person can make a difference. Riley sighed but nodded. She understood the importance of symbols and stories. Even if she was uncomfortable being part of one, the galaxy needed hope, needed to believe that standing up to evil was possible. If her experience could provide that, she supposed she could endure a few more ceremonies. A young human officer approached them, saluting smartly. "Ms. Riley, there's someone here to see you. She says it's important." Riley followed the officer to one of Haven's rest meeting rooms. Inside, a woman waited, her appearance marking her as Kelthian, a species known for their artistic achievements and peaceful nature. But the woman's expression was desperate, her hands trembling. "Please," the Kelthian woman said as soon as Riley entered. "I heard what you did for the Vothran Elder. I need your help. My daughter is being held by slavers in the outer reaches. I have tried official channels, but no one will risk angering the criminal syndicates. You are the only one I could think of who might care enough to help." Riley felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. This was not the first such request she had received. People came to her constantly now, asking for help with problems that seemed insurmountable. She was just one person. She could not save everyone. But as she looked into the Kelthian woman's eyes, she remembered lying in that alley on Frontier's edge, too weak to move, waiting to die. She remembered Riley stopping when everyone else walked past. She remembered the simple act of compassion that had changed everything. "Tell me everything you know about where your daughter is being held," Riley said, pulling out a datapad. "I can't promise I can save her, but I promise I'll try." The Kelthian woman burst into tears of relief and began explaining the situation. Riley took notes, already thinking about who she could contact for help. Captain Holt's strike group was still in the sector. There were also independent ship captains who owed Earth favors. It would be dangerous and complicated, but that had never stopped her before. Orim watched from the doorway, a slight smile on his ancient face. This was who Riley was, who she would always be. Not a symbol or a hero, just someone who could not turn away from those who needed help. And in a galaxy full of beings who had forgotten how to care, that made her the most dangerous kind of person. Because compassion, when backed by determination and courage, could change the world. It could start wars and end them. It could topple empires and build new ones. It could inspire others to be better than they thought possible. The Kashan Empire had learned that lesson the hard way. They had dismissed humanity as weak and sentimental, unable to understand that those very qualities were humanity's greatest strength. Humans did not fight for territory or resources or power. They fought for each other, for the innocent, for the belief that the galaxy could be better than it was. Riley finished taking notes and looked up at the Kelthian woman. "I'll need a few days to put together a team and plan the rescue. Stay here on Haven's Rest where you'll be safe. I'll contact you as soon as I have news." The woman thanked her profusely and left, hope evident in her bearing for the first time in months. Riley turned to Orim, who had entered the room fully. "Another mission," the elder observed. "Someone needs help," Riley said simply. "That's reason enough. You cannot save everyone, Riley. Maybe not. But I can try to save this one, and then the next one, and the one after that." Riley stood and gathered her things. Someone has to stand between the predators and the prey. Might as well be me. Orim nodded slowly, understanding in his golden eyes. This was what made humanity special. Not their technology or their military might, but their stubborn refusal to accept that suffering was inevitable. They saw someone in pain and their first instinct was to help, even when it was dangerous, even when it made no logical sense. "The galaxy is fortunate to have discovered humanity," Orim said, "even if it does not fully understand you yet." Riley smiled. "Give them time. We're just getting started." She left the meeting room and headed toward the docking bay where her ship waited. It was a gift from the Vothran, a small vessel designed for speed and stealth. She had named it Second Chance, a reminder that sometimes all it took to change someone's fate was one person willing to stop and help. Around Haven's Rest, the ships continued their endless dance of arrivals and departures. Refugees found safety. Diplomats negotiated treaties. Soldiers stood watch against threats. And in the heart of it all, one human woman prepared for another mission, another chance to prove that compassion was not weakness, but the foundation of true strength. The galaxy was learning. Slowly, painfully, but learning. That kindness mattered. That individuals could make a difference. That standing up to evil was always worth the cost. And it had all started with one simple choice in a dark alley on a forgotten station. When Riley had decided she could not walk past someone who needed help, that choice had changed everything. And it would keep changing things, one saved life at a time until the galaxy became the place it should have been all along.